Okay, someone tell me, is the sound working on Zoom? Sorry, everyone, this is the first time I've done this. Can I see a thumbs up? It's working. Excellent. Okay, take two. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us for our guest speaker, who needs very little introduction. I'm sure that most of our students have, at some stage or another, or even ourselves, played Christopher Norton's amazing works. So I will, with no further ado, invite Christopher Norton to take the microphone.
Thank you. So everybody, I'm talking to you from Eastern Canada. So actually it's 7 in the morning for me. All sorts of times. When I spoke to Sarah, she said to me that'll be 8:30 at night. Is that right? Yeah. So it's crazy, the different time changes. But hey, we've managed to span the world with this one. I'm doing a couple of presentations on the pieces on the ABRSM syllabus for piano. And I'm starting today with one from the initial grade and then one from grade 2. What I'm going to do is talk a bit about the piece, show you a performance or a couple of performances, talk about preparing for the exam. You'll be pleased to hear. Not that there's that much to say with these pieces, but there's some things I can say which might be useful. And also do a bit of analysis of each piece and talk about the chords used in the piece. And then finally, believe it or not, do a bit of improvisation on the piece as well. So I'm actually going to sort of rove about the pieces slightly in a rather unusual way. I do this quite often with teachers, and I've discovered they find it quite useful for lessons if you can actually do something a bit fun outside of just the written notes. So that's the kind of plan. I'm going to be sharing my screen now, and I think you'll see, let's see what you do see. Here we go. You can see my piano, and also, here we go. Now, you'll be pleased to hear this is my grandson. Both my grandchildren who are in Toronto learn the piano and in fact are doing the Royal Conservatory exams, which are like the Canadian equivalent to the ABRSM. So there he is with me, and here is presentation number 1. So Enchanted Castle is the first piece I'm looking at, and this is a piece from the Microjazz Duets collection. One of the things about the duets collections from Boozy and Hawkes is there are 3 of them at the moment, and they are about to be reissued because all of my books are about to be reissued by Boozy and Hawkes with different covers, same content but different covers, and any audio will actually be available on Spotify, iTunes, etc., on all digital platforms. So we're no longer having CDs in the books, obviously. So this is Microjazz Duets collection as it is at the moment, and background to this, it was written in 1992, so I'm much older than you think. And it was a book of pieces which had never been in any other books. It was a new book at that time, but it was joining 2 books called Microjazz Duets and More Microjazz Duets. And then all 3 of them have become the 3 duet collections, 1, 2, and 3, and this is number 1. And I believe this is all pre-grade 1 to grade 1 in difficulty, so it's all pretty easy. But it does cover a wide range of styles. And I was very pleased when the Associated Board chose this piece because it's a very subtle piece, and I'll talk about the style of it in a moment. So first of all, I thought what I'd do is play a composer performance. So what I've done on YouTube is I've recorded lots of things for duet where I play both parts, but there's not 2 of me on screen. What I'm doing is you'll see me play a bit of the primo and a bit of the secondo, and I've cut them together. So here is Enchanted Castle, played by the composer. Lovely. Now, preparing for an examination, the secondo part, I've got the music in front of me here, and I'm just having a look at the secondo part here, is marked piano at the beginning, and it should definitely be quiet in the primo part. I think the primo part is also marked, no, the primo part is marked mezzo piano, so it is actually marked a level down. So if two students are playing this, make sure the secondo part really is quiet in the primo part. It's common sense, but do that. The descending figures, by that I mean, and the left hand, should be played very legato. You notice in the video I'm trying, and I'm pedaling it as well, so you actually join that with the fingers as well as the pedal, and with a slight drop of the wrist on the first note and a rise of the wrist on the second note. I think you can probably see me. I'm trying to do it with one hand here because my keyboard's to my right here. So that's the first thing, play very legato and make sure that the secondo part is piano. The second thing is the secondo player, I think, is likely to do the pedaling. And when I'm pedaling this, I've said pedal right after the first note of each two-note figure. Now, I'm just going to fiddle about with this for a moment. Won't be a second. Again, I'm just going to go out of this here and look at my piano. I'm thinking about the pedaling that I'm doing there, and in fact, just going back into keynote again, just to make sure I'm in the right track here. Here we go. Play. So pedal right after the first note of each two-note figure. So you play the first note and then pedal. Then change the pedal as you play the next note. And then it says in my notes here, don't pedal in bar 9. Now bar 9 is this here. And then pedal again after 3 bars, I think. So what I'm saying is, don't blur those quavers with the pedal too much in bar 9 if you've got the music in front of you there. And the other thing is play very legato, building from bar 9, which is that it says crescendo, and getting softer again from bar 13. So basically, oh yes, I think I'm just looking at my music here. So just to play you a bit of this, softly, build, MF, so build all the way through there, really, the crescendo. You can even build it further from the MF in bar 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, basically. So I say getting softer again in my notes here, but in fact, I would say keep it about mezzo forte is probably the common sense solution. Have a really cantabile tone at bar 16. Now, when I say bar 16, I mean bar 17. It's this. So the student should play that as legato as possible and no pedal from bar 17. So don't try and pedal that section there, but keep it just completely sustained in the hand. And then I've got some pedal notes. I've got a worksheet for this, by the way, so the notes that I've marked down are there on your worksheet as well. And use pedal to the end. Pedal, 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 and keep it down. So the secondo part is really nice to play, and it plays quite a role, and it's a mixture of pedaling and not pedaling. The primo part should have a singing tone, obviously, and be shaped so that it feels like you're building to bar 5. Now this is this tune here. So make sure the student can play that with a really nice shape, as though they're singing it or playing it on a violin or a clarinet. And then shape the phrase away from bar 7. So it really, again, should all be done in the hand, although the pedal is being provided by the left-hand player, by the secondo. But the right-hand player has to do it all in their hand. So playing beautifully legato and cantabile in the hand. It says here, use arm weight at bar 19. This is this. So really, for the first time, use quite a lot of arm weight. And then these 2-note chords, I love the idea of this, you going, that both of those right-hand notes go down exactly together. That's the important thing. As I've written here, playing exactly at the same time. And play the ending really quietly. It says PP, so as quietly as possible. Now, I'm quite pleased to say that I found something on YouTube. I've got the link here for you, but there's 2 young boys played this piece as well, and I think they all the things I've just talked about, they do beautifully. So this is actually a very nice YouTube performance of the same piece, not by me, but by 2 students. Isn't that lovely? So, I mean, I think they play that really, really well. Analysis. Now, this is interesting. It's not terribly complicated, this piece, but it's an E natural minor. So it's an E minor scale with a flat 7th note. It has an A section, which is that tune, and so on. And then the first 4 bars are repeated with a different ending. So this is at bar 9. So basically, it's an A section and then an A section with a different ending. And then the B section is this rather lovely. And it feels rather different as well because it's got major chords under it for the first time instead of minor chords. So, and then there's a little restatement of the first 4 bars of the A section, of the last 4 bars of the A section, which is this little figure. So quite a simple little structure, but it's worth you know about this. The melody is divided between the hands, with the A section featuring primo and the B section featuring secondo, then primo. You'll be able to see that, and you saw that in the video. And there are lots of 5 chords. Now, this is a funny thing for me to say, but 5 chords are chords with no third. So I rather like the sound of this. So an E minor, an E5 is like that. Here's C5, D5, and it gives it a rather folk quality. This piece is really like a folk song, and in fact, it is. It's almost a pentatonic melody, but you might say the natural minor means it's got a folk flavour as well. And then there's a 5 chord with an added 9. Now the added 9, I think I'm right in saying this. Oh yes, so E5 with an added 9 would be E with an F sharp added. So the chord is E, B, F sharp. And that has a really nice effect. And in fact, if you just play around with chords like that, you can tell straight away that it has a very distinctive flavour, which is quite sort of jazzy in its own way. The style is lyrical and cantabile with an impressionist element. It's definitely got an impressionist element to it. Chords used. Now this is very interesting. I've got a picture of the chords that I've used in the piece. So they're E5, D5, C major, D, and E5 add 9. Now you've got this on your worksheets, and in fact it's quite nice to just play these chords, to get the student to play them, just to enjoy the sound of those chords, because these are not standard chords, having no third in the first 2 chords for a start and the last chord as well, makes them a little bit different. Here's the chord chart. Now this is interesting because if you tried to play this without the music in front of you and just did it as a chord chart, I'm just going to do that. So that in itself is a lovely thing to try out for a student as well if they're trying to do very simple improvising or just playing the chords with the piece. I'd like to talk about simple improvisation, and one of the things you can do with this piece is get one of the players to play it or record yourself playing it. I've done this with a click, and I'll play this for you. You can hear what it sounds like. See if it plays for me. I think it just takes it. Here we go. So isn't that nice? And you can do that. In other words, you can record yourself playing the secondo part I put with a little click with it as well, just using a simple sequencer program, and then try improvising. And I've suggested some simple improvisation ideas for this piece, just for you to have a look at. So here's the first one, where you just play chords. So you've got. So I've changed the chords somewhat here and there just because it sounded nice. So I put major seventh chords in there. But you can see there you can do very simple chords with this piece, and it really sounds nice. And then here's another thing you can do is play some patterns with the chords. This is the same chords. Here's pattern 1. Now look at this. So you're taking the pattern and doing it through the sequence. Second pattern. Oh, this is nice. So on. And believe it or not, I have a third pattern as well. What's this one? This is not so complicated. One thing I do with students is you take a pattern like this, just using 2 chords, the first 2 chords of the piece, and get them to try various simple patterns between the hands using only those 2 chords. So it's just an idea to do a little sort of fun improvisation thing on this piece before the end of a lesson or during a lesson or whatever. So try your own patterns through the chord progression using the 4-note chords. And finally, some simple right-hand ideas. I'm using the pentatonic, I've put motor scale here, which is rather unusual, but pentatonic minor scale, I mean, and the tracks applied, or live accompaniment from someone else. I think there is a backing track for this piece as well, and certainly with the reissue of the collections, all the backing tracks will be available on all digital platforms, including the one for Enchanted Castle. Here's the minor pentatonic scale. An octave higher. So if you played that track or the secondo part by itself and then played that scale, it would already sound really nice. Just doing simple improvisations using that scale. Now, some simple devices, if you're using right hand, create your own simple variations of the original melody. Here's the original melody. Now, here's my variation. So just doing simple variations of the tune that's actually in the book. Secondly, using the notes of the scale in any order to make your own melodies, repeating ideas if you can. Here's the melody again. And so on. And thirdly, answering the first 2 bars of your tune with a different contrasting idea. think harmonizing your melody with only the keynotes. Now this is so just single note harmonization based on the notes you can see in the book. So that's a whole lot of sort of things to do with this piece. And one thing which I'd like to bring to your attention, because it's rather exciting for me, is there's a brand new book out, which you can get anywhere in the world, called Connections Preparatory Duets. And it's the same level as the piece we've just been looking at. That's what it looks like. And this is from 80 Days Publishing, which is my own company. And if you go to 80dayspublishing.com, it's right there, and it's in your local currency as well, and it's printed in your own country. So you might look at that. But I was going to show you one piece from this book, and just to tell you something about these pieces. It contains 18 pieces, all at the same kind of level, with a very easy student primo and easy to play teacher secondo. Teachers, you'll be very pleased to hear the teacher part's very easy to play as well, along with backing tracks at practice and performance tempos. And there's the other thing which I wanted to mention was the preparatory duets are available on SuperScore, which is a wonderful iPad app, in which you can take the secondo or primo part out and play along with it at any speed. You can tip the thing on its side and it redraws itself on the screen, and the backing track is also mixable. It's a very nice little app. Here's a piece called Lake Scene, which is, you can see how easy this is. There's the primo part, incredibly straightforward for the student. I've been playing this with one of my little grandchildren. They really love doing it because it sounds quite rich. And here it is with the backing track as well. So that's Connections Preparatory Duets, which again, if you're looking for additional repertoire for your students who've been doing Enchanted Castle, this is a lovely book to add to it. You may also like Connections Book 1 of Duets. I just wanted to mention these because this is all duet repertoire, which is brand new. And this is just quickly showing you a little piece of this. This is called The Minstrel from Piano Duets 1. That's what the cover looks like. Again, pretty easy. This is a bit like Enchanted Castle. Now that's quite a good piece if you're done Enchanted Castle and want to go on to something slightly harder. It's going the other way from the first book I showed you. These are more difficult. And just very briefly, there's also a second book of duets in the Connections series, and these are really quite advanced. But for those teachers who've got more advanced students, you may be interested to see what these are like. I won't play all of this, but just to show you some of this, this is really quite a lot of fun. And so on. So just some interesting things you think about. I'm going to pass through this as well because I don't want to run out of time, and go straight on to Intercity Storm. This is from Micro Jazz Collection 2, and there's 25 pieces in this book, and it's been incredibly popular and used a lot ever since it came out. In fact, the microjazz pieces from this book came onto the Associative Board in 1987, and the books first came out in 1983. No, 1985, I think. So in fact, the presence of microjazz pieces from this book goes back a long, long way. And these have MIDI files and backing tracks. It's also, much of it's available on Superscore as well. There's the microjazz collection 2 cover. This is about to be reissued, in fact, with a different cover, same content, but with all the audio, again, highlighted as being on digital platforms, because it was on a CD. Intercity Storm, preparing this for an examination. This is a staccato study. It's a very interesting case, this, because it is staccato pretty much all of the time. And I'm just going to see if I can find my little piece of music for this. I can remember it as well, but just to have a reference point. So the left hand is obviously staccato, but the right hand it is as well. And quite a lot of students forget that, and in fact they end up going, and it should be all crisp staccato. But also, it's only marked mezzo forte, so it's not too loud. So that's the first point to make the staccatos in both hands and make them very crisp and don't make them too loud. Using a small drop of a very flexible wrist, ignore my phone, to play each left-hand note. Remember that each note should be played in exactly the same way as its neighbor. So what I'm saying is whatever finger you use, it's the same movement, a flexible wrist, and all those notes should come out with exactly the same sound, whatever finger you're using. Play no louder than MF at the beginning, I think you know this, and change to forte at bar 9 when it goes. So it goes, in other words, the restatement comes up a level and goes right down to piano by the 4th beat of bar 20, so it goes a long way down. So you've got to try and go from forte, which it stays at all the way through, until those last few bars where it gets right down to piano. These dynamics are important. I hear quite a few performances of this piece where the dynamics are basically all at forte or all at mezzo forte, but in fact, if you really notice these dynamics, it'll make quite a difference. The right hand should use a light staccato of the flexible wrist and 4 small drops of your wrist. Same thing, so that each note sounds exactly the same, whether it's your thumb, whether it's your 5th finger, because it's not really your fingers playing it, it's your wrist and arm are playing it. Okay. It's not written in the score, but whenever offbeat quavers occur, I tend to put a small crescendo. So you could just build that a little bit, dum, 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 da, dee, and lead to that little phrase. So don't make too much of it, because examiners might say, why have you done that? But at the same time, it does seem to be an implied thing, which I could have written in the first place, I think. Make the wrist drops smaller and smaller as you get quieter in bars 18 and 19. See how quietly you can get while still getting an identical staccato. So these are all kind of common sense points to make, but they're important ones to have, and I've got them in your worksheet as well. And the ending is suddenly mezzo forte. You get right down to piano with the pedal, and then make it positive, but don't make it too loud. And I play it even quieter, maybe even piano, but in fact, overall, if you're playing for an examination, stick to the music and do an MF ending, I would say. Here's a composer performance of this, recorded quite a few years ago, but in fact, it still pretty much sounds like I'm expecting it here. This was recorded when I still lived in the UK, so it's from probably 9 years ago. Nice. Now, I thought this was fun. There's lots of YouTube performances of this, and this was a particularly charming little performance. Not perfect, but I really quite like the character of it.
Start.
She's obviously about to look around and smile at the camera. I like the way she's added or taken away beats here and there as well, like I've done, but not necessarily in the same places. Anyway, it's fun hearing students play these pieces. Composition techniques. It's in G minor and it has an A section of 8 bars with a surprise missing beat in bar 8, and that's something which students need to be aware of. The fact that for some reason I decided I wanted to have a beat missing in the 8th bar, so there's only a 3/4 bar there. The opening 8 bars are repeated with the right hand up an octave. The last 4 bars are then repeated with the diminuendo. So it's quite a simple structure, this one. It's all about the rhythm. The ending has these mysterious chords built in fourths, G, C, F in the right hand, which sounds like this, and D, G, C in the left hand. And the only pedal in the piece, followed by the opening right hand figure played without pedal in both hands as a final flourish. The rhythmic style was influenced by Michael Jackson's Beat It. Now, you'd be surprised to hear that, but if you listen to the piece, just beat it, you can tell that's the kind of underlying beat. Although when you hear the backing track for this, because the backing tracks are all available, I've done as a hard rock piece, so it can be accompanied by a driving rock beat as well. But it is influenced by Michael Jackson's Beat It, there's no doubt about it. Chords used. Now this is interesting. G minor 7. Now, although it's not written in the music that there's an F in the opening chord, it's actually, every time I play this, I always add that 7th. And then the second chord, the E flat chord, is an E flat 13. So you get, if I play just chords, and the last chord, of course, is D minor 11, of all things. So the chords in this piece, the implied chords, are quite interesting, quite unusual. Voicings. Now I'm just mentioning this in passing that you could play a G minor chord, you could play a G minor 7 chord. The typical jazz voicing is the one I've written here. E flat chord you could play, E flat 7, E flat 13, and then, as always, that's the same one. So I've just got that on your worksheet for you to play around with. They're quite nice, those voicings that are implied in this piece. Now, there is a book called Improvised Microjazz, which actually I'm not going to show you at the moment particularly, but just to show you what it looks like. And that is, you play the piece as written up to bar 20, and then you do various fun improvisation things with that left hand providing the sort of harmonic shape. And you notice the scale that I've got here, which is G minor pentatonic. So it goes through various techniques you can use in the right hand to create an improvisation, and then you basically hear all the questions and answers, all sorts of things. This is called, as I said, Improvised Microjazz. It's quite a nice little book. There's no backing tracks, it's just sort of standalone, but Intercity Storm is one of the pieces in it. And if you liked Intercity Storm, you might also like pieces from Connections 4. There are actually 11 volumes of Connections for piano, and they've been out since 2007 and are a huge mainstay of the Royal Conservatory examination system in Canada. But they're gradually getting known around the rest of the world. And in fact, Australia also features Connections pieces on some of its syllabuses as well. But this is all at about the same level as Intercity Storm. And I thought I'd just quickly show you one called Positively Swinging. This is me playing it on a piano. Students love that. This is what it looks like, and these have backing tracks available. They're all free, and in the book you'll find the backing track is a code for you to get the backing tracks, but they're also going up on all digital platforms very shortly. But this is what it sounds like with the backing track. so on. So I've mentioned prep books from Connections, prep books 1 to 10 and duets, all available from 80 Days Publishing. That's what they look like. It's a big selection. That's the 10 volumes spread across 10 levels, so they're all graded. And Connections 4 is about the same level as Intercity Storm. Connections 1 is slightly harder than Enchanted Castle, but there's a prep book, which I've shown you the cover of before as well. So you can find all those with sound clips and everything on the site. So that's my official presentation. If you want any questions or comments now, this is a good time to do it. I'm fine for time, by the way, so fire away.
Well, I want to say thank you, but I do have a question, and that is, you have composed so much over such a long period of time. How do you keep, oh, I didn't mean it like that. But how do you keep coming up with so many ideas and such a variety of ideas?
Well, my background is very sort of varied, if you like. When I was 19, I won New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand originally. Won New Zealand's main concerto competition during the Prokofiev First. So I've done sort of concert pianism as a start, but I'm really familiar with the whole range of classical music. But at about that age, I started getting into playing jazz and pop as well, and played in a variety of contexts. And so I'm drawing all the time on a strange variety of things. So when I start a piece, I'm thinking about like Intercity Storm, as I said, is influenced by Beat It by Michael Jackson. Enchanted Castle is like a folk piece because, again, I'm very familiar with a lot of folk music as well. And in fact, some of the teachers here, if you're from Singapore and Malaysia, you may have come across the Eastern Preludes, which is a lovely book where I've done basically my own takes on pieces like Chan Millie Chan from Singapore is one of them. But I like taking material and just kind of making it my own, if you like, including my own material. In other words, I start with an idea and then do what I think sounds nice with it. That's all I can say. I don't really know. Nobody entirely knows how they do stuff. You know what I mean? Also, I am quite old, so therefore I've been doing it a long time. Because microjazz, this is an interesting point, everybody. Microjazz is being relaunched along with the rest of my catalogue by Boosey and Hawkes this year. And you know how many years it is since I first walked into the offices of Boosey and Hawkes, my publishers? 40 years. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, that somebody's been with the publisher for 40 years. So therefore, I started writing those pieces in 1981, which is 40 years ago, including Intercity Storm. That was written in 1981 at the Edinburgh Festival, where I was with a band doing a theatre show. And somebody at another company, not Boosey and Hawkes, asked me to write a set of graded pieces in popular styles, and I wrote 40 pieces in a block, including Intercity Storm and a whole lot of others, which became Microjazz 1 and 2. And then they sat in my bottom drawer, because that company, the person there left the company, and eventually I met somebody at Boosey and Hawkes, and they were interested to find I had these pieces, and they called it Microjazz. It wasn't even my title. I'm just saying it does go back a long way. But even now, I just sit down, like I've been doing today. Improvisation and composition are quite related, and that's why I'm saying when you've got students playing these pieces, doing simple improvisation things and chord playing is quite nice, because it encourages them in a way to be a little bit more creative about what they're doing as well. Because it's got to the stage now where I can start with anything and turn it into a piece. And I don't mind not knowing what the style is before I start, if that's a bit of an answer to your question, Sarah.
Thank you. And I see Karen has a question in the chat. Karen, do you want to ask yourself? Oh, wait, she can't unmute. I'm sorry.
So what's the question in the chat?
Okay, actually, yes, if you do speak, remember that your face will be shown on Facebook Live, unless you turn your video off. The question is, what grades do the later collection books correspond to, approximately with regards to ABRSM?
You're talking about Connections?
Yes.
Yeah. They're like a soft edge version of the same grades as the ABRSM, because Canada has 10 grades, rather unusually, and so I've done it across 10, so it's slightly easier. But their grade 4, that piece I played, Your Positively Swing, is one of their grade 4 pieces. I think the Social Board might use that for a grade 3. So what's quite nice about them is you can use them for repertoire, but just think grade 10, think grade 8, think probably grade 6. You know what I mean? Just step them down a touch. It's closer at the beginning, but as it gets further up, the associative board contracts, you might say, it gets harder quicker. So I like the 10 grades as it happens. And of course, it's a preparatory book, so actually 11 books altogether, which are graded right across the 11 books. I should say as well, by the way, that the connections books, like microjazz, I think, the pieces are not harder through the book. In other words, you can dip into the book anywhere, and they're all about the same level. Which is very useful if you're doing a 40-piece challenge or whatever it might be. Or do you have own choice in the associative board? You do. So these are ideal for own choice if you're looking for pieces, because students are crazy about the connections pieces everywhere in the world that they're used, because they've got the same, melodic charm, you might say, as the microjazz books have got. But there's 11 volumes of them, and backing tracks for everything at 2 speeds, which is rather nice. So you can actually use those if you want to use them. It's just an interesting addition. Okay.
Mei Xian, I don't know if you can see the chat, Mr. Norton, but Mei Xian has asked, she's got the microjazz books. Where does she access backing tracks?
Boozy and Hawks are reissuing everything of mine, as I said, with the backing tracks all on all digital platforms. This is happening like imminently. So, funnily enough, I can give Sarah my email address. So if there's anybody who wants a particular backing track for microjazz at this point, I'll send it to you by email. But after that, you'll be able to get it on Spotify, for instance, or if you want your own copy, get it off iTunes. But incidentally, microjazz collections 1 to 3, you may know of. What you don't know is something which is coming out in 2 weeks' time, and that is microjazz collections 4 and 5. There are 2 new microjazz books coming out. This is amazing news, and they've all got backing tracks as well. And in fact, am I sharing my screen? I am, yes, aren't I? What I might do is just show you have you got time for this, Sarah?
We have time, but you're not currently sharing your screen.
I'll share my screen again. Here we go. There's my screen. And I'm just going to go to my, where will I go? Dropbox, here we go. You'll love this. And here we go. And am I thinking the right thing here? Yeah, microjazz book 5, say, with piano. So here's a piece from So that's from Microjazz Collection 5. It's harder than anything in microjazz, but only a bit. In other words, it's probably up at about grade 6, 7 kind of region. But they're a lovely set of pieces, and there's like 40 new pieces. So that's coming out in about 2 weeks' time. You're the first people in the world to hear that, by the way. That was a world premiere we just had there. But that's available through Boozy and Hawks. And Boozy and Hawks, of course, if you just go to Amazon or Google it, you'll find you can get them from wherever the distributors are. That's a different thing again. So they're easy to get hold of. But there's going to be a big launch of that. I'm doing lots of interviews about it and all sorts, including Boozy and Hawks are actually having signed plaques of some kind. You know, I mean, there's competitions going on all sorts. But this is a big thing. And the other thing which is happening, which you'll be very interested to hear, maybe, is Microjazz Duet Collections 4. In other words, there's a new duets collection coming out as well, which is harder than Duet Collections 3. So there's actually 3 new microjazz books coming out in the next month, certainly, but the solo pieces in the next 2 weeks. You
Now,
heard it, you heard it here first. And in fact, I may even do a session on that book as it comes out on this platform. It'd be lovely because I think the associate board would be very interested in those pieces as additional repertoire.
that's lovely. Now, Jennifer has a question.
Hey, hi, Christopher. Yeah, I have a
Hello.
question here. Actually, two questions. So,
Okay.
the first is just want to know your micro jazz because I know jazz you need like adder chords, the ninth chord, the 13th chords. So for like the younger children, in your books, do you actually have step by step for them to practice? And also because most of them are classically trained, so most of the time we do use like a metronome.
Yeah.
So, do you encourage us to start using metronome even to play jazz, or like because you have the tracks, right? So, how do we move from practicing alone? Do we use a metronome to get the groove in, or do you encourage us to listen to it more? And then, meanwhile, they can then, play and improvise at the same time. Yeah, thank you.
I think using tracks is better because the tracks do have a groove. Metronome is particularly difficult in some ways because it's just a beat. So, but the track does actually give you a sort of stylistic context as well as a beat, if you like. And all the tracks we're doing are at 2 speeds. So you have got a slower version as well. And don't forget as well, of course, as I mentioned, I think the associate board actually has software, doesn't it, where you can slow the tracks down. Is that right, Sarah?
Yes, the speed shifter.
Yeah, they've got a speed shifter, so it's not a problem if you say come across a piece and think, well, it's a bit quick for my student. But do bear in mind connections as well as microjazz because connections starts easier, quite a bit easier as you can see. And there's a nice solo book which I haven't even mentioned called Connections Preparatory, which has tracks as well, but it's very, very easy. And students, I've worked with lots of students using it, and they all find it pretty good because it's all in 5-finger position and so on. Because that's the way to get used to it, if you like, is just start very simply and even start separate hands with the track. Don't necessarily try and play both hands together at once, but actually do right hand with the track, perhaps just playing the melody. Because these are very melodically based pieces, aren't they? So you can actually play it, the tune, if you like, only with the backing track, and that's a good starting point as well. What I've done today as well is showed you also that you can play chords with the track, which is a very nice exercise to do for students. And I think most teachers can figure out simple chords. You don't have to figure out exactly what the chords are, but I encourage you to try and, like Enchanted Castle was an interesting example because the chords in it are all there, but there's no thirds in the chords. And so you could actually take the music that's written and think, Mr. Norton's used an E minor chord here with no third, why not? And just play that as your E minor chord and construct something, even initially a 2-bar thing like I did. So they're actually just trying a little simple thing where they're working between one chord and the next chord, not the whole sequence necessarily. I hope that helps. There's another series as well I've written called American Popular Piano, which does do it on a step-by-step basis as well, which is most recommendable as well. There's actually 9 volumes of that. I do tend to do large series. And that's used by a lot of examination boards, particularly here in North America, and I think in Australia as well, because I've actually been in Australia talking about that. So just mention that in passing. American Popular Piano distributed in America by Hal Leonard. I'm not sure. I think
Sorry, can you please say the title again, Christopher?
American Popular Piano. And that's taking a very step-by-step approach, a very leveled, and it's based on American methods. So the parts are even easier. American methods tend to do a very step-by-step approach, like band methods from America. So anyway, I just mentioned that. I don't want to confuse you with too many series, but I'm just saying there is another one, which actually is people have found very useful.
Any last questions? This is your chance. While we see the sun is rising, we've watched the sun rise at your end of the world.
That's right.
It's lovely.
Just on the worksheet, by the way, I've got some links. One of them is 80dayspublishing.com, obviously, which is the things I've been talking about of the Connection series. But there's also ChristopherNorton.com, which is my Boozy and Hawks web address, which has that kind of material, and we'll be launching the new things on that particularly. is also my Facebook composer page, which I've now got, I don't know, 5,500 people attached to that, but it's actually lots of teachers and lots of students are attached to that, and that has lots of clips of things almost on a daily basis. And the YouTube channel, of course, has complete levels. I'm working my way through all the connections books at the moment on YouTube on video as well. And that's called Christopher Microjazz is the YouTube address. So there's various sort of links there which you might find useful. And I do have a Spotify artist page as well, which has lots of Boozy and Hawks and lots of Connections products all on the same place, because my publishers are great. I own the Connection series, but they're happy enough to promote it on the artist pages on these digital platforms as well, because it's all one body of work, if you like, although there's different publishers involved. So when I see any of you next, I'm going to be looking at Jingo and Pop Bossa, which are grade 7 and 8 pieces from the associated board. So we're going up to much more difficult repertoire at that point.
I don't think I'd warned everyone that when I asked Mr. Norton if he would be willing to speak at one of these Monday Zooms, he offered to do more than one. That's more than I could ever ask. So yes, we have more in the pipeline. So keep your eye on the page on any of the pages we see. We listen to get shared a lot, but ABRSM exam pages where I will post the live stream is posted. So yeah, keep your eye on this space. We're planning another one in a fortnight. Is that?
That's correct.
That's correct. So yes, keep your ears peeled and have your cups of tea ready. It looks like there's no more questions. So, Mr. Norton, I want to thank you from the depth of my heart for meaning that everybody didn't need to listen to me for an hour, and for sharing your amazing compositions and just so much insight into your mind and how things get put together. So that was just so amazing. And maybe if we all want to unmute and just give a round of applause.